Greetings, Last Spellers. It's time to talk about a new beta branch that I'm very excited about. It has a lot of changes that I've been complaining about for a while. So without further ado, let's talk about the changes that are coming in the 0.97 release of The Last Spell. Headliners. Lakeburg is getting a total overhaul, complete map redesign. The Dryads are moving to Glenwall, a curious choice because I felt like that map already had kind of a bit of uniqueness going on. But it sounds like there is a new boss that is going to be added to Lakeburg. Obtaining equipment, shops, production, item generation, rerolls of rewards are all changing the way that you gear up your characters. Miss sensors, total overhaul also. That's very welcome. We'll talk about the changes that are coming in with that. And then various other bits and bobs. But let's get into the specifics. So Lakeburg, basically their thesis is Lakeburg didn't have a lake. And when they originally created it, it kind of had to be a jack of all trades and demonstrate all of the capacities of the game. So they've changed it to be its own kind of unique entity with a lake. Although the lake has a bunch of bridges over it and feels more marshy from my perspective, but we'll see. Once we get in there, maybe it will feel and look a little different. And then they've added heavy fortifications along the southern-ish border, which I do like from a conceptual perspective. Like, you know, it's the way you would build a castle. You're not going to heavily fortify the lakeside. You're going to build your walls and kind of have your settlement bump into it. Other minor changes that they've added are flying enemies will show up earlier in the nights. I think that's to kind of like counteract the fact that there's more advantageous terrain that you can take advantage of, and there will be more bulky enemies. So I assume bulky enemies doesn't mean just bulkies, it means boomers, bulkies, spearmen, so on and so forth. And then the Dryad boss has moved to Glenwall, which we'll talk about a little more in depth in a second. But just to review, this is the old Lakeburg. It was relatively square, relatively straightforward, and had what I always thought of as a lake in the lower right-hand corner, but apparently that was not lakey enough for the developers. And so it has been replaced by this, and there is what appears to be a large body of water in the northern portion of it, and then you see those heavy fortifications along the lower right edge. Like I said, at least from what I'm seeing, there's too many passages across the lake for it to feel super lake-like, but you know, we'll have to wait until we get into the game and see what that looks like. Dryads moving to Glenwall. You can fight a revamped version of the Dryads on the last night of Glenwall. Beware, it is stronger than before. The fight may also be a little bit longer too. So I have thoughts on this. I like the Dryad boss design quite a bit. It was the uniqueness of Lakeburg, and it does sound like Lakeburg is getting a new boss, but that won't be released as part of the beta. That's going to be their big surprise reveal. The Dryads moving to Glenwall, I think, is interesting. Glenwall is a bit shorter than Lakeburg in terms of nights, so having something explosive in the final act is interesting. One of the things about the Dryad boss that I always took a bit of issue with is that it is a challenge that you only get to at the end of what is basically like a 4 to 5 hour game. And so you don't have a lot of opportunity to learn the mechanics. And so I am wondering if this is going to feel at all frustrating. If they really have amped up the Dryad difficulty to 11, I think it could feel a little bad. Moving on to the shop rework. So the high level TLDR here is that production and shops, you kind of picked one in any given run because it was expensive, right? You had to upgrade the shop level, you had to upgrade the discount in the shop, and then if the shop didn't have what you want because it had a relatively small selection, that money was sort of wasted, which felt really bad when you would put all that money into upgrading the shop and then you just only got handed wands exclusively, or who knows what else, but some of the what we consider to be lower tier weapons. So the idea here is that, first of all, the shop is going to auto level. So over the course of a run, it will offer equipment that is commensurate with the difficulty that you are currently facing. I think this is a big benefit, because having a resource sink like that, it just felt somewhat punishing to always have to upgrade the shop and then not necessarily get anything out of it. The number of offered items is substantially increased. We'll see that in the animation that comes next, but it does look like you're going to have a lot more selection. And that selection is going to counterbalance a strategy that I think people were employing. I wasn't, but I think people were selectively not doing meta unlocks that negatively impacted the item pool, right? If you don't have wands in your item pool, you can't get them, which means you have a higher quality of items. I don't like those kinds of strategies, so I generally try to avoid them, but this is, it's interesting to hear that people are doing it and that they are actively trying to make it not punishing to do the meta unlocks. They added sorting and filtering. I think that's going to be a nice quality of life. And then weapons and armor are slightly cheaper than before, especially at lower levels. And I think this is such an important thing, because if you've watched any of my content, you know that first day time, you got to be buying equipment just to be able to use up the action economy that you have. So I think this is a really nice change. We'll have to see what the price points are, but any discount is very welcome. So this is what the new shop interface looks like. It looks like we have probably 30 to 40% more items if I was, kind of eyeballing it. And at least looking at it, the items look like they're maybe 40% cheaper. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see. This shows sorting, etc. Next up is production buildings. So before, the common strategy when using production buildings was to build one, max it out, repeat the process for a second one. Certainly true with gold mines, just because the action economy, or the worker economy for them, was so beneficial. We reworked production buildings in order to make it easier to have multiple buildings producing. And we made it a bit harder to hit those highs, those maxed out production buildings. I think this is good. It's funny because this is kind of the way, this is kind of the way that I was playing this before. I always played like the get 2 gold mines, get the first upgrade type of thing. And it seems like they're kind of pushing people in that direction of, to get your economy going, you want to have multiples. Now, as part of this change, they've also added shared production building upgrades. So what this means is for the armor maker, blacksmith, bower, magic shop, etc., they will all upgrade in level together. And you'll only do it once, and it will be an expensive upgrade. I think this is really good, because it was really problematic when you upgraded and you maxed out your bower completely, and then you felt like you only had bows, and you kind of were pushed into the situation where you couldn't have a diverse fighting force. So now you will be upgrading all of your production buildings at once. You'll hit the button and you will have level 2 armor maker, bower, blacksmith. The costs for these are 70, 120, 280, and 520, and those are tweaked because it makes sense, because now you're only doing it once, not across multiple. I do think that it's interesting to look, because the 70, 120, it kind of indicates to me that on average, people were upgrading 2 of these when they went the production route. I rarely went the production route. As a side note, they also note that now production buildings don't have this particular upgrade tied to the building itself, which means that if you lose a building, you don't necessarily lose this unlock during your run, which I think is also fair and valuable. All right, so other upgrades. Everything in the game kind of was half, right? One worker was half a bar. You started out and all your productions buildings generated half a bar, and they were like, we like round numbers, let's just round everything off. So now basically everything is 10. And when they wanted to do half increments, it would be 2 workers for 10. And then, as you can see down here, they change it. So they change it so that as you upgrade it, then it's 1 worker for 10, so on and so forth. The other nice thing is now all production buildings are going to just produce 1 item every night. So you're not going to have to worry about the first night after you get something. If you don't put a worker into it, you don't get anything out of it. So as I was mentioning, we have, you start out with 10 production, then you have 2 upgrades that increase that to 10 more, and then 20 more. And then your workers, you get 2 workers for 10 supply, then 1 worker for 10 supply, then you increase the number of times you can do it each day. Makes sense, nothing crazy there. So item generation, this is fascinating to me actually, because I don't think I noticed this because I don't play a lot with the meta unlocks, but the variance of swords or the variance of hand crossbows was causing biases in the distribution of items that you were getting. So basically, if you had the swords unlocked, there would be 7 different swords, and those would take up 7 times the spaces of the 1 poison staff that you had when you were rolling for an item, which meant that your item pool would be instantly flooded with staffs. So when you are fully unlocked, since every weapon has multiple varieties, I don't think that this has any effect on item distribution, but as you're leveling, I think this is very interesting and valuable. Next up, night rewards scale off the entirety of the run. That's really nice. Apparently, previously, after night 4, they just stopped upgrading. I never noticed it. I did stop caring about night rewards, so maybe now getting those perfects on late nights is going to be extra primo. And then finally, production reward rerolls. So basically, it looks like, I don't know if these are meta unlocks. I don't think they're clear, but basically, you're going to start out and go into the Orichalcum, and you're going to get 1 reroll per day. And you can spend that on one of the productions. You can't, it's not 1 reroll per production, it is 1 reroll across all of your productions. And then it says that there are further unlocks to get up to 3 per day. I assume they're all in the Orichalcum, which means that when we play tonight, we'll be hopefully rerolling up to 3 times each night, which is a huge difference when you get that bad RNG and you're like, oh wow, you're offering me 3 pairs of pants that are all trash type of thing. Mist sensors. Oh, thank goodness the mist sensors are changing. They're still going to be really annoying. If you were hoping that mist sensors were just going to be trivialized, I think this does exactly the opposite of that. So first of all, they changed the way that the mist sensor works. Enemies under the thin mist are untargetable, but can still be hit and damaged by AoEs and propagation. So this is so important because the number of times that you had like a poison propagator and you had one guy visible and then you had like a conga line behind him and you're like, if I could cast it on him and it would propagate, this would be brilliant, was numerous, especially on early nights. So this is a big change. Propagation going under mist is amazing. Same with catapults. Mist sensors basically made catapults not that valuable, and this is going to change that. I'm very curious from a visual perspective if you're going to be able to see the hit points of enemies that are underneath mist, and then also if you're going to be able to see the movement range, because those are 2 things that I think are particularly frustrating about the mist right now, is you don't know how far things are moving and you don't know how near death things are when they are under the mist. Next off, mist sensors added by Apocalypse 3 are now destroyed at the end of every night, and the new ones respawn at the start of every day in different locations. Different locations has me very nervous. I think it will make the Seers reroll the waves more valuable, because you'll be able to say, oh my gosh, all the mist sensors are in the northeast, let's avoid having a wave come there. But it also means that there's going to be a lot less predictability, and obviously the strategy that I have employed for mist sensors, which is get them all down to 10 hit points, is no more. And I think that's good, because it was frustrating. I didn't want to do it. It was an awful chore every run, and now we don't have the option to do it. To counterbalance that, though, the mist sensors have scaling health pools from 150 to 600 over the course of a run. So this means they're going to be easier to kill in the early game, and I think 600 hit points is a sweet spot where you can usually one-shot it with a large kitted out character. So I think they're finding some balance. We're going to have to see if they nailed it on this one. And then the number of mist sensors is now increases over the course of the run. So we'll have to see where it starts, where it ends, but I think that all of these changes are good because they acknowledge how much of a burden mist sensors are early game and then how much you can deal with them later, and they also make them a recurring nuisance that isn't as gameable. So, construction overhaul menu. This is not particularly interesting. It seems like repairing, and by repairing by type, is going to be easier. I try not to repair things as much as possible. And then there's also structures and defenses. So building and construction menus get an overhaul. It looks nice. No major complaints. Glenwall now has better night rewards. I think this is good. I think this counterbalances the fact that Glenwall is harder. Your S ranks in Glenwall should be more valuable and should assist you more in the long term. Gildenberg appears to be made a little easier, so the myth starts further away. The enemies on night 5 are now more concentrated, and then they slightly reduce the number of enemies on 4, 5, and 6. I think this is good. Gildenberg is kind of like the training wheels zone, so I think it should work that way. Level ups used to go 5, 3, 1 for number of options, right? You re-roll the first time, you get 2 less options. You re-roll again, you get 2 less options. They've now changed it so that last re-roll still gives you 2 options. So you're not going to get, or you're less likely to get completely ruined if you go for that last re-roll. I still usually went for it, and I had a lot of level ups that became wasted as a result. And they are continuing to optimize the game. Thank goodness. The memory leak fix, I will give it a big thumbs up. That has changed the way that I play the game. And then bug fixes. Apparently there was an infinite gold bug. Didn't know, don't care. Fixed a soft lock with boom being used on boomers. There's a certain poetry to that, I will say. Fixed enemies stuck in Glenwall forever. Glad I never ran into that one. And then heroes generated in the inn with too many experience points. Also something I never ran into. So to kind of come full circle, I'm really excited about this patch. I will be playing it this evening. If you're seeing this video, I'm hoping I get this live on the day that I am going live with it. So feel free to come over and hang out with me live either on Twitch or YouTube. You can check the description down below to find it. If this video was useful to you, toss a thumbs up. It would be super appreciated, and a subscription if you're interested in more content like this. But at a high level, Lakeburg rework, we'll see. Dryads, scary. Obtaining equipment seems like good changes. I'm excited to see what economy builds and what production builds look like and what they yield. Miss sensor changes seem like they're going to become a less gameable component of the game, which I'm very happy about. And then a variety of quality of life issues. But overall, I'm very excited about this patch. And I hope you are too. Would love to hear in the comments if you have any things that you particularly hate or love about the patch. But have a good one, and I'll see you in the last spell. Bye.